Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fire! Pursuing truth. Torching idols, rebelling against the world. This is the HECKPHIRE Podcast.
Hey there, welcome to another edition of the HECKPHIRE Podcast. Glad that you made time for us. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all of you who are watching via YouTube, courtesy of our sponsors. And don't forget, you can at any time upgrade. You can upgrade to a paid subscription if you haven't already done so, and that gives you access to our After Hours portion, where today on After Hours, when I send that out to those of you who are paid subscribers, I have come out pretty staunchly opposed to the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to the Department of Health and Human Services. I wrote an article about that for Not the Bee, the website Not the Bee, the cousin, sister, whatever you want to call, of the Babylon Bee, and got lit up by the MAGA world for being a closet progressive and being a lunatic and always being wrong in my opinions and being the closet liberal on staff, which is awesome. Had no idea it was a liberal progressive because I oppose a liberal progressive from taking his position as the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. It's odd how that works. But anyway, so I'm going to get into some of the nasty comments that came my way, as well as some of the more thoughtful ones as to why people said, oh, it's really not a big deal if this guy gets the job. It might actually be a good thing. So we'll talk about that in the After Hours section, along with our Friday 5 questions that came in from all of you. I would love it if any of you would jump on board and become a paid subscriber and get access to all of that stuff. And let me tell you why. Because there's a lot of stuff. I understand when people say, I can't afford it. I don't want to have that extra cost. I understand that. And if supporting this ministry is not something that you have, that would be good stewardship for you, then you absolutely shouldn't do it. And I don't want to put any pressure on people to do that. But I know that there are people out there who are looking for commentary and insight and things like that, and they find value in it, and so they want to support that. Here's why I'm comfortable doing that. Because there are people like what you're about to see, they are charging the same amount, and people are going to pay it in great numbers for these people to be sharing their thoughts and ideas. If you don't know who Jennifer Rubin used to be a columnist at the Washington Post. She was at one point in time considered a conservative Republican columnist. Now, being a conservative Republican at the Washington Post is probably much more like, Woodrow Wilson to normal human beings, a radical socialist. A radical socialist at the Washington Post, that's like our conservative Republican there. That's pretty much the makeup of their staff. I might be exaggerating a bit. But Jen Rubin was, at one point in time, a common sense conservative, which typically means they aren't going to stand for conservative social values, because that's just not sophisticated. To be against abortion, to be in favor of biblical or traditional marriage, all that stuff. That's not sophisticated. But they will support lower taxes and a smaller regulatory state, all of that stuff. And that was Jen Rubin. kind of supportive of George W. Bush, those kinds of people. Well, when Donald Trump came along, she became, like many people, hardened against anything and everything Republican. But the Washington Post kept her on as the conservative Republican columnist, even as she's endorsing virtually everything that the left was putting out. As the left becomes more progressive and more liberal and bordering in many cases on flat out socialism, Jen Rubin is, well, here's the case for it. Here's why this is actually a good thing. And she became a joke to everybody, it seems, but the Washington Post. Then she goes on with Bill O'Reilly, back when Bill O'Reilly was on Fox News. And he just humiliated her in a famous interview that you can go on YouTube and watch yourself. It was really bad. And so I started watching some of Jen Rubin's stuff, and I cannot figure how these people continue to keep these high-priced jobs at places like the Washington Post. Well, now, Jen Rubin was shamed into resigning from the Washington Post because she went out, and I don't remember exact order of it, but there was it might have been the LA Times, where the editorial board was told by the paper's publisher that they could not endorse Kamala Harris in the election, that they weren't going to take sides, they weren't going to do that. And so Jen Rubin said, all of you must resign. This is an attack on the freedom of the press and all of this stuff. So she sells out, you have to resign. Well, then what happened? Then Jeff Bezos and the administrative staff of the Washington Post told the Washington Post editors the same thing. But Jen Rubin wasn't giving up her paycheck. So eventually she's shamed into resigning, and now she's acting like she's taking this great stand. So she has started her own little publication. It's not going to be little. There'll be people that buy, which is why I'm saying, look, you have the opportunity to buy into this ministry. How could it not be better than this? Watch this introductory video and tell me, did you ever watch any of those satirical Christopher Guest movies? Like the Best in Show movie, or This Is Spinal Tap? What's the other one that Waiting for Guffman, I think, was one of them. I mean, there's a handful of them that it's just, that's what this reminds me of. Watch this introductory clip and recognize there's probably going to be 1,000 some people that will sign up for this.
Hi, I'm Jen Rubin.
And I'm Norm Eisen.
I am here to announce I am leaving the Washington Post in order to co-found with Norm an exciting new online platform, The Contrarian. We are going to bring you written material, podcasts, interviews, social media, all in defense of democracy. Our intent is to combat the authoritarian force that we all face. To help us, we have an exciting array of contributors from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds to help us in this venture.
We're going to do politics. We're going to do law, but we know that any successful pro-democracy movement also has to be very vocal about culture. We'll have a humor column. We'll even have a cooking column, but we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of pro-democracy flavor.
And we're going to have pets. We're very pro-pets. So please, join us in this journey. We cannot do this without you. We want your contributions, your input, your ideas.
Thank you for joining The Contrarian.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. People are actually going to pay to get that kind of commentary. So come on, man, throw me a bone here. I promise you that what we turn out, and here's why I'm confident, because what we're going to do is we're going to try to look at issues not through the eyes of Peter Heck. We're going to try to look at issues, as we do here, through the eyes of faith, through a biblical lens, to the degree that it is applicable. And I think the Bible is applicable to all of life. And so we're not always going to be right, because obviously we're all fallen and make mistakes. But the community that we're building, it may not be as large as Jen Rubin's Contrarian. By the way, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be, but didn't Mussolini call his publication The Contrarian? Yeah, the dictator. And that's been Jen Rubin's big thing. She thinks Donald Trump's going to be a dictator. She's the one naming her paper the same name that a dictator did. Nuts. Anyway, And I need to check that. I could be wrong, and I don't want to give you false information, but I'm pretty sure. All right, let's switch gears here real quick. I just wanted to make that pitch to you. The looting of Los Angeles continues in wake of these fires that have taken place. Why don't we start with the devastation of the fires? It's just unimaginable. It's unimaginable to think of what that city looked like and those areas now look like. It's heartbreaking. It is incredible loss of fortune. It's incredible loss of material wealth and possession. And you know as well as I do that there are many who do not have insurance any longer. I saw that Tyler Perry, one of the actors and producers out there, was attacking insurance companies for canceling their policies. I always find this to be, and I want to preface this by saying I am not interested in spiking the football in the face of those who have lost their homes. And I don't know if Tyler Perry has lost his home. I know many of them have multiple homes, and that's helpful. But there's a lot of other people that don't. And even if you do have multiple homes, I'm not going to celebrate your house burning down just because we disagree politically. But the knee-jerk reaction of folks like Tyler Perry and folks on the left who will attack the private sector for responding and doing what they have to do to survive the impact of bad public policy from left-wing lawmakers. Left-wing lawmakers start making all of these new regulatory demands and all of this new legislation predicated upon their religious belief in climate change and global warming and anthropogenic man-caused global warming. And they say, well, we got to do this, we got to do that, and we got all these regulations, and the cost of things becomes excessively high. Then private companies have to respond to those costs. And when they do, then they get criticized. That's the way. It's as though those who are progressive, like Tyler Perry, those who are liberal, those who are far left Democrats, like Tyler Perry, and donate to those politicians make the policy that then has the effects on the private sector that then the private sector has to respond to, and then Perry gets mad even though his support of those politicians is what caused the problem to begin with. It really is astounding that it's the job of the private sector to hide or to cover the impact of bad left-wing policy. The reason the insurance premiums became exhaustively high, the reasons that insurance companies had to withdraw coverage and cancel policies is because the cost of doing business had gone so high because of bad left-wing policy in the state of California, they couldn't survive. But now we're going to blame private companies for being greedy, trying to keep their head above water. Speaking of the climate change stuff, the governor of California blaming climate change for these devastating fires. Okay, climate change did not fail to clean out underbrush, to clear forests. Climate change did not cause the draining of reservoirs, hundreds of thousands of gallons worth of water. None of that had anything to do with climate change. But let's suppose for a second, for the sake of argument, this is what always bothers me, and I'm not sure why it doesn't bother more people. Let's say that climate change was in fact a real crisis. Let's grant that point to the left. That climate change is happening, that the world is getting warmer, the globe is getting warmer, and it's going to lead to more catastrophic forest fires, it's going to lead to more catastrophic hurricanes, it's going to lead to more violent tornadoes, all of those things. What is the left's position on what we should do? What are they saying to do? They're saying we need to cut down on emissions of carbon. We need to slap all of these new regulations on automakers. And we need to transition to non-carbon based fuel. Okay, all of these long-term solutions that according to every single one of their models, number one, would not be enough to impact the changing climate as it is. And number two, if in fact it ever did, it would be way down the road after all of these catastrophic realities are going to happen anyway. And then number three, the United States implementing these policies does nothing if China doesn't change and do the same thing. If Russia doesn't change and do the same thing, if Brazil doesn't change and do the same thing, if all of Europe doesn't change, if it's just the United States, it's spitting in the ocean. And we all know this to be true. If climate change stuff was really real, if the oceans were going to be rising, if the storms were really going to be getting more violent because of this global climate change, then our immediate policy moves should all be focused on what? Not stopping climate change, which we're not going to be able to do anyway if the globe is changing and altering its climate. No, we should be responding to, protecting against the impacts of all of these things. How do we build facilities that can withstand more violent tornadoes? How can we protect communities from them? How is it that we can reinforce seawalls and come up with innovative ways? Look at what Ron DeSantis has done in the state of Florida. No, they haven't stopped hurricanes, but what have they done? They've implemented a strategic plan that gets Florida back up and operational within days after even the most catastrophic storm imaginable. The one that devastated North Carolina to the point that people are still outside of their homes and communities are still flattened. And it came ashore in Florida. And Florida's been up and operational and rebuilt. Power was on quickly, and Florida sent their power companies and power teams up into the other states to help them out. That's what I'm talking about. If you really are concerned about the effects of climate change, then dedicate your focus and policy to limiting the impacts that are going to come from it. If you believe that climate change causes more violent forest fires and wildfires, then have fire break stopgaps constructed around the world, one of the world's most populated cities, wealthiest cities. Have emergency protocol that allows people to be rescued and to be evacuated, that has teams positioned to be able to redirect the fires, controlled burns, all of those things. Come up with innovative new ideas to utilize drone technology to fight fires. That is what forward-thinking leadership would do. Not simply talk about how the government can regulate things more to make itself wealthy at the expense of the private sector and the people. That isn't somebody that's interested in fighting climate change. It's somebody who's interested in expanding the bureaucratic state. It's somebody that's interested in growing government. It's somebody who's interested in expanding the public sector and taking more money from people for ostensibly no reason whatsoever. That's the failed leadership. Look at the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. Do you know the guy that ran against her, Rick Caruso? Do you know what he did? He saved the Palisades Mall. The Palisades fire that was out there that devastated the entire town and wiped out all those homes, the mall survived. Do you know how the mall survived? Rick Caruso saved the mall with private firefighters and private tankers. Given access to the world's, and Gavin Newsom loves to brag about this, fourth largest economy in the world is the state of California. Supposedly having control of that, they couldn't find a way to protect towns, the city of Los Angeles. But a guy who ran for mayor and was defeated, he is able to come up with private firefighters and private tankers to be able to protect that mall. That's leadership. And it's what the people of Los Angeles had rejected. By the way, it's not as though, I say all this, it's not as though there isn't legislation taking place in the great state of California. Here's the news. I'm looking at it here on my phone. California legislative leaders and Governor Gavin Newsom have struck a $50 million deal to do what? To Trump-proof California. Sets aside $25 million, half of that money, to the Department of Justice in the state of California to be able to fight lawsuits against Trump policies at the federal level. That's what California lawmakers are doing. City of Los Angeles is being burned to the ground. Looters have moved in, many of whom were illegal immigrants, gangs moving in, understanding there's absolutely no threat of them being punished, of them being caught or punished, and they're looting. I am certainly not going to laugh at people's plight, like I said, but it is astounding to me that I see people like Julia Roberts, the actress, dropping profanity on the looters in Los Angeles. I understand it. Yeah, it is despicable behavior. It's why several states have enacted laws that say, yeah, there's looters, shoot them. Shoot them if they're coming onto your property. California, of course, is too forward-thinking, too liberal, too progressive to pass those kind of laws. But Julia Roberts is out there blasting the looters who would take from people's homes in this type of a situation. It's the same Julia Roberts that was on board with the Black Lives Matter riots and looters, that joined in the left when they said that looting is the language of the unheard. That they have no option other than to loot because it's the only way that they will be heard. It's the only way that they will be respected. This is the outcome of far left policy and far left thinking. Like the Babylon Bee that I work for, not the Bee. The Babylon Bee put out one of their fake headlines that says that the nation gets a glimpse of a Newsom-led presidency. And it shows the city of Los Angeles burned to the ground. Is it satire? Is it biting? Is it in like a jab? Of course it is. But it's also true. This is where left-wing leadership leads. And I don't know why anybody should be ashamed to point that out. It's not pejorative. It's not attacking. It's not in any way like a personal offense towards people. This is where the focus of left-wing governance is. This is the outcome of progressive government. This is where it will leave you in a time of crisis. For the sake of the environment, we're not going to get rid of the underbrush. It might disturb some of the wildlife there. We don't want to lose this particular salmon, and so we're going to drain these reservoirs. And then when wildfires come, the fire hydrants don't work. There's no controlling, no stop gaps that have been constructed where, like dead zones where the fire can't spread. None of that. And the fires just sweep through and obliterate people's homes. Millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Billions of dollars. And then the same people whose poor policy led to the disaster, they say, well, these insurance companies, they're not doing their job. Well, you put them in a position where they can't do their job. None of them could do their job. You drove them into near bankruptcy. And there'll be people that say, well, we need to give the government more money. It's like calling in the arsonist to put out the fire. No pun intended in this particular situation. At some point, I know this is a cliched phrase, but people have to wake up. It's not that the Republican Party has all the answers. You've seen some of the Republican Party officials. I don't think Donald Trump has all the answers. I don't think it at all. Just wait, those of you who are paid subscribers to the After Hours section. If you think that I think Trump has all the answers, I think Trump probably has very few answers. I think some of the people around him have decent answers. But you see, like Mitch McConnell, You think he's got all of the answers that we're looking for there? I don't think so. Many of these figures do not. And I'm not saying, hey, let's support the Republican Party and the Republican Party only. Some Republicans aren't worthy of your support. But I'm telling you, man, look at where progressive-minded leadership leads. And it is a train wreck. It is a disaster. And it is leading communities and states into the pit of HE double hockey sticks. And if that seems exorbitant, if that seems outrageous, go and look at some of the devastation in the city of Los Angeles, and you'll see for yourself. It's sad, devastating, really. And knowing it's preventable makes it even worse. I'll be interested in your thoughts. Peter at peterheck.com, Peter at peterheck.com. Leadership makes all the difference in the world. peterpeterheck.com email address. Those of you who are paid subscribers, stay tuned so you can hear how stupid I am from some of the commenters and some of the responses I got for my RFK column, and why I think that I'm still right about that. If you're a free subscriber, obviously you're not going to get access to that, but you stay tuned here and you'll get the Bible teaching next week, another HECKPHIRE in another week, and I personally can't wait for it, so I'll see you then. The HECKPHIRE only burns because of loyal friends and supporters of this ministry. All of these are people and groups that I know personally and trust implicitly. I can't say enough good things about my friend Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, about my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at Trueland Equipment, my insurance company at Norris Insurance, the place where I buy and lease all of my vehicles, McGonigal GM Buick, and main attraction hair, nobody else touches this head, Stevens Machine, my mechanic at Terrell's Auto Service, my longtime realtor, the Wyman Group, and certainly so much can be said for those fighting for family values in the public square, like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life. Please support them all and thank them.